And this was perfect piece of that. We just heard that 89% of the Restart schools have used budgetary flexibility. I am thinking back to a panel that we had in a planning and work session at North Carolina A&T, where we heard from a group of principals who are specialists in school turnaround, and they made, one of the points they made for us was the flexibilities that Restart schools receive make the difference in the school, the success of those schools, but then those flexibilities disappear after they have gotten to where we want them to be, and the flexibilities go away. Does that make any sense? But budgetary flexibility obviously being an important part of that. We heard on Tuesday from the districts from Terrell County that flexibility in budget was something that would really help them in the work that they need to do. And then Alexis confirmed that, I think, yesterday, and said she hears that all the time from districts, that budgetary flexibility is something they badly need. I think the evidence is out there, and that's something we really need to think about when we talk about a legislative agenda or priority for us, is exploring that possibility.
Yep.
So thank you for tipping that.
Ms. Clemens.
Thank you, Ms. Garber. I just had a question, just looking at the slide where you highlighted, the schools that were kind of met above expectations, meeting and not meeting. Do we know, like looking at specifically the ones that have not met those expectations at this point, whether we see any trends or patterns from, what cohort they're in, maybe if they are a newer cohort, then maybe they haven't had adequate time to see that progress. Do we see any patterns or trends with that, or how they're even using their flexibility?
Mm-hmm. So last year, when based on that data, the report, what we shared, we did some observation analysis between the 21 that were above and the 21 that were below. And one of the things we have to consider is that these schools are recurring low performing. So they're already 3 years, right? And at the point of this, that those schools were cohort 1 and cohort 2. So there was a difference in their implementation. To be honest with you, I'd have to go back and look at the specific 21 and which cohorts they were in. But one of the pieces of analysis that we did was looking at comparing the two. One of the things you see in those who are above is a very strong, very evidence of subgroup growth. So those schools, from memory, 95% of those 21 schools above expectations are meet or exceeding their subgroups. So the group of subgroups that are the same over those course of years are meeting or exceeding. So those schools are addressing their subgroups, right? Another thing that we noticed was that those schools are also very able to monitor their flexibilities, where the other ones we didn't see their they weren't able to provide measures of progress of what they were doing. And for me personally, some conclusions I drew from that was that these 21 know how to monitor. They know how to build it into their school improvement plan, watch it, and address it. Whereas these schools, as the 21, not on track, and again, this is my conclusion, right, that they didn't have as much evidence that they knew how to monitor. And so that was one of the pieces that we went after, is supporting school improvement practices. Because I believe, how can you ask a school to add an innovative practice and tell us whether or not it's working if they don't know how to track it? And if they don't know how to track it, that means they're not tracking school improvement in general. And so what we've done is, in this process of monitoring, what they're asked to do is identify a small incremental goal that what is their incremental goal, not a SIP goal, what's an incremental goal for how they're using the flexibility, and how do they know it's working. But the incremental goal does not have to be academic. it can be non-academic, because we know that practices have to change before student outcomes are gonna change. And so these schools are, if they're tracking it and they know how to track it, we just spoke to a school the other day when they're getting ready to report again, and they wanted to share their report, and are they ready? And this school was down to putting pieces in practice and surveying their teachers, asking their teachers and their students, is it working? Right? So they've put pieces in place to monitor. So those are some pieces that I've gleaned.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned the ones that were above. What you noticed the most was about the subgroup growth. Are there specific practices, structures put in place there that, that we're using to help some of the other schools? And what are those, some of those things that you've seen?
So definitely the use of tutors. I mean, we know additional staff, the more people in the building, right? The more people touching kids. Tutors, a specific focus on interventions. I mean, it's a, as you well know, they're complex. It's more than just one strategy, right? It's a host of strategies. So one of the things that we are doing is drawing out from these schools how they're using interventions. And so we recently had one of our PLNs was about supporting core. And our next move will be about from core interventions and drawing out what are these restart schools using, how are they using their flexibility to support core, how are they using their flexibility to support interventions.
Great, and this data is great because not only it helps, restart schools or, low performing schools or schools that are, just struggling in some of these areas. So thank you for that, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll sum up the conversation that absolutely everything that Ms. Garber said about our restart schools can be transferred to ESSER funding that was used during our crisis, and the absolute necessity that we be tracking how those dollars were spent and was there a positive outcome. If there was not, we do not need to continue that practice. And that same conversation can be transferred over to the Leandro, and any dollars that might be given or any resources that might be given, we best be tracking. Otherwise, we are taking dollars and throwing them down the drain. What they're doing at that level for our restart schools can be extrapolated and magnified. We must measure. We must track. We must review. And if it's not working, we don't need to continue doing it.
Yeah. I do have one final, I know you did a summary. May I add one point?
One last thing.
One last thing, okay. It also ties to the discussion that we were having that Superintendent Truitt mentioned early in the meeting this morning about it's got to have some there's got to be a fiscal way to get to this low investment, high outcomes, because it ties to, I'd like to know about the use of dollars, the flexibility in the use of dollars, and how that can tell us more about low investment, or it could be high investment, I don't know. But either way, to tie into that concept would be fascinating.
Excellent. So we'll close out this discussion with a reminder that this report is asking us to make the small adjustment to add the extension to a 7-year review because of the COVID waiver that was given and the lack of academic data. So we're going to make that, with your permission, we'll make that adjustment in the policy.
That's why, may I ask?
Yes.
Procedurally, that's down as a discussion item. Are you suggesting we should transfer that recommendation to an action on first read?
I would love to do that. That's my oversight during committee and not doing that. But since we we know that we're going to need that small tweak, if it's okay with you all, we could move that to action on first read and just amend that language. Ms. Garber, is that okay? Yes.
All right, without objection, we'll do so.
Thank you, Vice Chair Duncan. Is it okay if I proceed to the next
Please do,
committee?
yes.
Okay, because I know that Mr. Keenan is looking and I'm now eating into his time. So moving forward to the Education, Innovation, and Charter School Committee report. Jill Kamnitz and I have the amazing opportunity to work together on this committee. We have an action on first read for this report. This North Raleigh Charter Academy was a charter school that we approved earlier. They're in their second year and they have been unable to secure an appropriate location. Mr. Machado, would you like to come to the podium and just highlight the reasons that they are requesting that they relinquish their charter?
Thank you, Ms. White. North Raleigh Charter is a Charter School USA school. They are on their second year delay, and they were unable to secure a piece of property that they could afford. They did locate one, but they weren't able to close on it, and then the construction costs have just escalated so much. I just thought it was in their best interest at this point to relinquish their charter and try again at some point.
Okay, thank you so much. Questions for Mr. Machado? Okay, hearing none, we will move over to the discussion items that we have today. EICS 2 is the NC Access timeline application and rubric update. You heard this report last month, but there have been some updates, and so Jay Whalen is here. Welcome. You want to walk us through and highlight the differences that you're sharing with us this month?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Ms. White. So we mentioned last month that we had our normal updates to the timeline and how we would run a timeline in the spring for our sub-grant applications. But I also mentioned there was a possibility that we wouldn't run another competition based on replication applications that are submitted in the fall. And so we received 2 applications by the October 1st deadline. And after the review committee reviews and the recommendations, we do plan to take those 2 recommendations to the Charter School Advisory Board next week for approval. And so what that means is, with official recommendation from CSAB, we would bring those recommendations to you all in December, and then we felt it best to push this item to update the timeline also to December to officially approve that we will not have another application timeline in the spring. So if these 2 replication applications are approved, we would have awarded 62 subgrants, which surpasses our goal of 60, and we would only have roughly $150,000 allocated remaining for subgrants, and so not enough to run a full competition. And we would then look to provide supplemental support for existing subgrantees that are meeting the goals and expectations of the program, have positive monitoring reviews and things like that. And we would bring those recommendations to you for any supplemental funding when that time comes. But that is the update at this point. So you will receive the 2 recommendations for our replication applications in December, as well as this item, which would be for your approval to not hold another competition in the spring. So we'll have more in December, but I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Questions from colleagues? Okay, that's great, and I really appreciate you bringing that to us this month so that we'll be able to take the action that's needed next month on the 2 that you're moving forward, given that CSAB offers.
We will also have CSAB recommend official approval of the timeline as well.
Terrific. Thank you
Great.
for your work.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, let's move quickly to EICS 3, and this is the North Carolina Virtual Annual Report. And let's see. Good morning. So glad to have you here.
Good morning, Mia Murphy here. I serve as NC Virtual's Chief Operations Officer. And good morning, Vice Chair Duncan, Superintendent Truitt, the board, and our listening audience. We are so incredibly excited to present our 2020 annual report. Like all schools, 2020 was our first full pandemic year in a virtual school. So like all schools, we faced many challenges, lots of growth, and lots of opportunities to really hone in on how we serve our students, districts, and schools. So Dr. Townsend Smith, I'm gonna leapfrog a little bit, but I'll give you a cue. I wanna give an overview of our academic year and just do a couple of highlights, and then we'll move into the different aspects. One thing that we like to do with this particular annual report is that we really want to put the data in our stakeholders' hands. So it is searchable. It is a Tableau dashboard. I'm always surprised at how many people access this throughout the year. So starting with the year in NC Virtual, this is actually our 14th year. We're actually going into our 15th year. We have served 648,466 student enrollments. Actually, with year 2021, 55,000 student enrollments. We are still the nation's second largest virtual school, right behind, not right, but behind Florida Virtual. We've implemented 18 new courses in the 2021 academic year, and we also assisted with the launch of the Rethink grant. That grant is really going to assist with the provision of blended and online learning, and we're also going to utilize some of those courses in our catalog. Like I said before, this was our first full pandemic year, so I would like to go to the COVID impact tab. I think that's the second tab. And this is one of the things that Ms. White pressed on and really helped us to see in committee is like, this is a lot. And talk about some of the things and how you've changed in various ways, and especially operationally. So just want to do a minute or two to just highlight a couple of those things. You can't experience a phenomenon like this and not grow, especially if you're in the business of helping children. First of all, our enrollment. Looking at, truthfully, this fall, this is our largest fall enrollment ever, and we're still enrolling transfers. We're at just about 35,000 enrollments, and probably at capacity in just every way that you can be, but happily so for the fall. We've expanded our middle school. We had plans to expand middle school, but during COVID, we really realized that we really needed to hunker down and figure out how we could grow. So originally we had 4 courses that were primarily electives, but we had a pretty large middle school population because that population of students were taking courses for high school credit. So now we have many more true middle school courses, but a different population. So that you have traditional middle school students, not those who are working toward high school credit as much. And so that also meant that we could target and change some of the ways that we do support. So our model is primarily asynchronous. So we're starting with our middle school population. We actually started blending in more synchronous opportunities. Our younger students do definitely need that support. We relaunched our credit recovery program and really worked to expand our courses to meet the needs. Operationally, with our growth, we're really looking at our infrastructure and how we can expand that. Looking at more synchronous instruction overall, we have definitely more diverse students, and realizing, especially depending on their online learning situation in their district, that a synchronous model will definitely help some. We're actually investigating an implementation of a statewide tutoring program. We have a large teacher pool, very qualified teacher pool who can definitely help the state. And we're looking at doing, we already have it for internally, but for the state, a parent online course, best practices that our districts can use and take and implement in any way that they see fit. So we've definitely been impacted by COVID like everyone, but lots of growth opportunities, and we're very happy for that. So we'll move to our super students, which is why we do this. And I love this page because we can see their faces. They're also clickable, so you learn why that student is a super student. And these are students who have gone beyond just their course requirements. They are athletes, they are musicians, they have careers planned out, all sorts of absolutely amazing things. So we always want to highlight them. But also looking to the left, you can see that we had students to participate in the Western Carolina foreign language contest, and our students won. You can see all of our winners there. So they are why we do this, and always happy to see their faces. Moving on to our teachers. Now at NC Virtual, we are just incredibly blessed to be able to hire and retain some of the best educators in the nation. They love their students, and they work with each individually where they are. So our teacher page highlights some of the accomplishments of our teachers. And this year we wanted to focus on those who have definitely gone above and beyond and won some national awards also. So I think a couple of months ago you met Joy Crosby. She's our Teacher of the Year. But I also want to highlight Denise Renfro. Denise teaches chemistry for us, but she is the 2021 Presidential Environmental Education Award winner. And this award was presented by the Environmental Protection Agency. She is in Cumberland County, but she also teaches full-time for a district. Bert Witowski is the Outstanding Biology Teacher Award winner. And this award was bestowed to him by the National Association of Biology Teachers. So definitely wanted to highlight some of our awesome teachers. We actually employed 741 teachers and world language coaches in 2021. And we're happy that Ms. Stover has joined us this year, our 2020 Burroughs Welcome Fund Teacher of the Year. So you can see that we are really able to attract the best, and that is awesome for our students and districts. So looking at our courses, so this one always gets me a little giddy. Last year, when we presented our report, and we were definitely very excited about this, we had 23 courses that met the Quality Matters certification. If you're not familiar, Quality Matters is pretty much the standard bearer for course quality and quality assurance for K-12 and post-secondary courses. One of our biggest barrier to actually doing more was just funding, not having the financial resources, but thank you to the board for providing that. And so now we're at 61 courses. And at 61 courses, we are #1 in the nation. We have more QM certified courses than any other K-12 entity in the nation. And so we are incredibly proud of that. We're committed to this. Our staff, those who it is appropriate for, are trained in Quality Matters, and we also have 3 who are master reviewers. This means that they lead review teams, but if I'm not mistaken, there are only about 6 in the state, and 3 work for NC Virtual. So this makes us very proud, very excited, lots of hard work, but we thank you for your support in this. So let's look at the scorecard quickly. Now the scorecard is the searchable component, and this gets a lot of attention throughout the year. And over to the left, actually, you can search by district, you can look at particular courses, and the dashboard will look at whatever you're searching for, and it will comply. But we look at our top enrolling courses, districts, of course by grades, level. You can also see our pass rate, which is a little lower than in past years, which shows that, we're doing great things, but no extra special secret sauce. We are impacted by the pandemic. We served 55,332 student enrollments last year, and that represents about 31,000, almost 32 unique students. So obviously students take multiple courses. So that is completely searchable at your when you have time to look and see what districts in your region, what they're enrolling in, who gets to enroll with NC Virtual. That actually has expanded with the pandemic, and that is very exciting. So looking at academic achievement, we are very excited that for our general honors population, we surpassed the state averages. You can see that in the very top. We break it out in a couple of different ways because we teach a couple of specialized groups that are overrepresented for us, and it doesn't mirror what you would see in a traditional district. To the right, you see our advanced placement map where, and then you can mouse near those. What we do here is really try to look at access to see who is enrolling with us for advanced placement courses, and you can see the legend. So we want to work on our blue areas that if their students are in need of advanced placement programming, we have anywhere in our catalog between 16 and 20 courses that they do take advantage. And so we always look to see where the populations for that are in the state. Quickly looking at our outreach and support page, This page is just as it states. It talks about all of our outreach efforts. Throughout the year. We've done various professional development. It scrolls. It should. Yeah, it'll let you scroll to the right. Yeah, I think I saw a scroll bar there at the top. But that's fine. So with that, and that page you can definitely go to when you have time. Each one of those images leads to a web page where it tells all about it. But we've had all sorts of professional developments, lots of orientations. We used to just do one big orientation for the year open house, but now we actually hone in on parents of our in-service students and then parents in general. With COVID, we've had to do a whole lot more of that because everyone has a virtual program and parents are very confused. So, working with language and lots of support there, but all of those are applicable for you to learn more about the program. Next to last, our impact on district. This, we hope, tells the story of enrollment because, when you look at larger districts, just by sheer numbers, they're going to have more students. So what we do here is that we do a ratio of our enrollments based over the 6 through 12 ADM to kind of see the impact. The left is all enrollments, meaning a student may have taken 3 or 4 classes, all of it's included. And the right is that particular student, so no duplication. And it's always telling because our largest, or our district that we have the greatest impact is actually high, tiny. So only about 278 or so in 6 through 12. But about 58%. So you can see, it's not necessarily a larger districts when you look at impact. And the last item, and we also show our financials, and you don't necessarily click that unless you want to, like Talon Smith, where we show the projected versus the actual and that reconciliation of that. So that was very quick. But that is our annual report 2021. I welcome any questions.
Ms. Stover. So I didn't have a question, but more of a comment. I just wanted to say, as an NCVPS teacher, it is a phenomenal program. It really opens up opportunities for students in our state. For instance, you mentioned Hyde County. Growing up in a small farming community in Ohio, I did not have access to AP courses. And with this program, we can offer those courses to students. We can offer honors courses to students. We can offer foreign language courses to students. It opens up the world to the kids in North Carolina because they have an opportunity to take courses even if there's not a teacher at their brick and mortar traditional school that can offer those courses. So thank you very much for the hard work you've done in putting together all of those courses. Also, the professional development that NCVPS does is phenomenal. I went through the teacher and training course over the summer, some of the best PD I've ever had an opportunity to engage in. I think it would be phenomenal if we could open that up to other teachers, especially in light of some of the challenges that teachers faced trying to switch to remote learning. It really provides you with a sound and very, very comprehensive formula to be an effective online or blended teacher. And I also love the way that NCVPS is reaching out to the local community schools and being able to pair a highly qualified content teacher with a teacher who is in the classroom that can help deliver that instruction to some of our students in the occupational classes. So just a phenomenal program, and thank you so much for everything that NCVPS is doing for the 1.5 million kids in our state.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
Ms.
we do have what she talked about was our induction program, which is very lengthy, 15 weeks. We do have a light program we call TOT that we use some of the CARES Act funding for, where it does do some of that preparation in a much more truncated fashion. But we've had about 500 educators to go through that also, and we're still enrolling.
Questions or comments? So if you're listening online and want to see more about North Carolina virtual schools, you can go to ncvps.org, and their homepage is an absolute plethora of information that just can get you connected to all of the the services that they're providing. So highly encourage you to do that.
I have just a quick question.
Okay,
Are
Dr.
your-
Thompson, aye?
I have utmost respect for any teacher in the virtual world who submits anything to Quality Matters. I just completed a course myself, and I held my breath, or I was afraid I wouldn't pass the course. But it is something. I mean, it's probably right up there with my dissertation.
It is.
It is, it's grueling. My question is, though, are any of your courses accelerated?
When you say accelerated, do you mean that students can progress through it quick? Yes. We have to be flexible. So we build that into, because we used to have a separate flex program where, students may need longer or actually quicker amount of time. And so we actually flex within the course, and our teachers can adjust the pacing. We have to do that anyway because we have so many calendars within the state. And so we have some schools who are finishing before Christmas. Our calendar goes after. And so, yes, we do. You can flex, you can. And if you need longer, you can definitely get an extension. But if you need a more accelerated pace, we can work with students that way also.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on being #1 in the nation. I certainly hope that's highlighted somewhere for all of our media folks that might be listening. 2 more items, consent items, just to briefly mention. EICS4, Shining Rock Classical Academy is going to amend its mission statement. It's online for you on eBoard. Just a few words here and there. And then EICS5, Envision Science Academy is requesting to implement a weighted lottery. Those 2 items will be before us for consent tomorrow.
Actually, today.
I'm sorry. Yep. Have it today, soon. If I'll quit talking, Mr. Vice Chair, I'm done.
Habits die hard.
Yes.
You're gonna be alone.
Thank you, Ms. White. I now recognize Mr. Reginald Keenan for the Healthy Responsible Students Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Reginald Keenan, Chair of the HRS Committee, along with Alan Duncan as I call my co-chair. Mr. Chair, today we have one action item, and it's dealing with the amendment to our school-based mental health policy because of Senate Bill 693. I think Dr. S is going. There you go. Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Keenan. Appreciate it. Mr. Duncan and Superintendent Truitt, good to be here this afternoon. Real quick, just going to go over what we talked about last week so you'll have an idea. Make sure you don't have any questions. I think it's the next. So if you'll remember, last month I brought to you the school mental health policy. We received legislation on September 1st that requires the State Board of Education to adopt a rule requiring child abuse and neglect information to be put out to schools and students in grades 6 through 12. And we have added this to the school mental health policy so that could go through that rulemaking process. In the meantime, though, we are making some connections with this work with some of the work that we currently do now.
Any questions, comments? Anyone?
Hang-
If not, Mr. Chair,
You want me to make it? So just a few connections on things that we're doing. The Title V Sexual Risk Avoidance Education Funds, will be bringing information about those to you next month as well, and we using some of those funds to do some of that professional development around child abuse, neglect, and mental health, as well as the Healthy Active Children policy, which you'll hear next month. And if you'll slip to the last slide, I think, just quickly to show you how we operationalize some of this work. So we'll be adding that, but we also look at our data and see what it tells us. And as soon as we got this legislation, we looked at our data, our youth risk behavior survey data that told us that most of our middle and high school students were talking to their peers about health education and mental health and emotional needs. And so we looked at that and said, then what can we do to help? So our team has worked to create some resources that will go to schools, and then we'll work on some professional development because this aligns directly with the Healthful Living Essential Standards around sexual abuse, assault, and child abuse. So we'll make sure that we can get those resources out to our Healthful Living teachers soon. So just to kind of show you how the legislation works backwards to the work that we do daily. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
no question. Dr. Esson, thank you very much
Thank you so
for what
much.
your team does, and now is, time is very important what you do. Great work. All right, Mr. Chair, that's all we have for you today.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. We will now break for lunch and return at about 12:25, get a jump on the afternoon. All right, we now stand in recess.
Okay.